Hello, everyone. I'm so excited for you all to be here. My name is Quante Turner. I'm the Food Entrepreneurs Program Manager at Commonwealth Kitchen, which is a kitchen incubator space in the heart of Boston and Dorchester. We help aspiring food businesses get everything they need to get permitted and start selling food in Boston. Aside from working with food entrepreneurs, I'm an entrepreneur myself with multiple businesses, having started and now a brick and mortar owner. And so I'm really excited to get into today's episode with you. BAMS Fest is a nonprofit, and it's Boston Art and Music Soul, a nonprofit that breaks down racial and social barriers to arts and music and culture across Greater Boston. They celebrate and support both artists and audiences of color with an emphasis on the Afro-diasporic voices, perspectives, and artistry. ARTDACITY is a conversational style series that explores the intersectionalities of arts, civics, and engagement, the lived experiences of Black and Brown creatives and entrepreneurs in the city and communities at large. So today, before we kind of jump into our episode with two amazing Black entrepreneurs that are creating spaces in Boston for us to dine well, I'd like to kind of acknowledge that the land that we stand on. Even though our event is virtual today, Boston Arts and Music Festival is sitting on a traditional territory of the Massachusetts people, and we like to pay our respects to our elders in the past, present, and emerging. Also want to shine light on our inclusivity and anti-harassment statement. Boston Arts and Music Festival, Music Soul Fest creates inclusive events and programs that welcome everyone. Our staff, board, volunteers, and affiliates have the right to a safe and respectful experience. Discrimination or harassment of any kind will not be tolerated in any form, in person or virtual. So to jump into today's delicious episode, I'd like to say the soul of food and the necessity of Black restaurant and chefs and culture and community. So from vegan to hearty, Black-owned restaurants have been the backbone of our communities. They serve the culture that we preserve. They create unapologetic, safe spaces for joy, connection, and release, while Black created or inspired dishes reminds us of our soul, our history, and magic. Hear from two Black restaurant owners in Boston area on the solutions that they believe can chart a new path for opportunities for our next generation, both our current chefs and creatives in the area, but also for our future. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce Kwasi Kwa, chef partner and Comfort Kitchen. Kwasi is a native of Ghana and has been honoring his culinary crafts at various kitchens and catering companies in Boston for over 10 years. In 2016, he launched a collaborative pop-up, the Chop Bar, as a venue to explore global flavors and cultural dialogue. The pop-up ran in tandem with the Hope Inc. open mic series at Dudley Cafe in Roxbury. This path led him to becoming the chef partner at Comfort Kitchen, a mission-driven cafe and restaurant celebrating food of the African diaspora, connected from Asia to the Americas. Comfort Kitchen will be opening in early 2022 in Dorchester's Upham's Corner. I personally can't wait. And currently the team is serving dinner pop-ups in Little Dipper and JP until the end of this year. So make sure you go check them out before they move over to their restaurant. Thank you so much, Kwasi, for joining us.
Thank you for having us.
And next, I have the wonderful pleasure of introducing Nia Grace. She is the owner of Daryl's Bar and Kitchen, as well as the co-founder of the Boston Black Hospitality Coalition. She has worked in the restaurant hospitality industry for over 20 years, and in this passion brought her homegrown cook back to a place where it serves that she loves the most: friends, food, and music. But beyond restaurant hospitality, Nia is committed to the need in us all to belong. Before purchasing Daryl's Corner Bar and Kitchen, Nia embraced a decade-long career in the nonprofit sector, fundraising and marketing for community-based human service organizations. Over the years, Nia has remained focused and involved in the community she loves, serving on boards for the AIDS Action Committee of Massachusetts and the Boston Cultural Council, with current board committees with the Massachusetts Restaurant Association, Boston Center for Youth and Families, and the Roxbury YMCA. And I'm so glad to welcome my source to the conversation, Nia Grace. Thank you for having me. All right. So to kind of start us off, what inspired you all to occupy the space in the restaurant industry? What kind of was your start? And we'll start with Quasi.
Well, first of all, thanks for having me. I really appreciate being here. This is awesome. I think everything that's happened here is really, it's everything that's meant to be that's happening all in one. So that's awesome. Um, for me, food started with kind of a pathway to be able to pay for college. And that's essentially what it was. It was, as a college student, I was a undocumented immigrant, and that's how I ended up in food. But once I was in it, it was just something that was such an undeniable passion that I could not walk away from it. Yeah, so I just kept working in kitchens, essentially to pay for school, but the passion grew so much so that once I was done with school, I was just like, "Yep, I'm staying, and this is where we're at, you know. And with Comfort Kitchen, it was just kind of a full circle moment where we had an opportunity to do something where we recognized all the disparities that was in the food industry as we saw it, and try to create something to kind of, I don't want to use the word attack, but really approach solutions that could help solve that. And that's where we're at right now.
I love that. I love that. So much of our talents and where we are in our current careers stemmed from, needing to make a way in the beginning. I know that's how I, got through the pandemic. I started baking and doing deliveries. So I completely understand and recognize that. Nia, what kind of inspired you to get into the industry?
My love and kind of passion for the industry stemmed from, being at home and loving to entertain. So that was being in the kitchen with my mom, my aunts, my grandmother, setting out Thanksgiving dinner, holiday dinners, cookouts, etc. And always just loving to see or being so gratified by seeing the reactions of people kind of enjoying the fruits of our labors, the love and the handwork that we put into it, the hours the night before, the day of, even down to the cleanup. It was something that was, it was so gratifying. But I went to school and I studied criminology, but I always talk about that my other major was events and entertainment. And so through my college, I was able to really get a knack for producing shows. I used to work at my campus restaurant, coordinating all the activities. But it was probably in 2010 that I realized my love for entertainment production as well as food could actually be melded. I had never, in fact, seen it happen so seamlessly as when I had walked into Daryl's Corner Bar and Kitchen in 2010. And so, interestingly enough, I said to my sorority sister while we were just, going to have a dine out and a drink out, I said, if I ever owned a venue, I wanted to be just like this. I wanted to have the music, the soul, the art, and I wanted to be able to walk in to a place in my city and feel super comfortable. And I just didn't know that 10 years later, that would be the space that I would actually be in. I think in general, the hospitality has to come natural to a lot of people. You can't fake it and be successful. You can't fake being a cook, a very good cook, and be successful, or a chef. You can't do those things, right? So it has to be in you between the long nights and early days, between supply not being the best, between having to work with what you have, right? And it was only about 5 years ago that I found that I kind of returned to the space as an employee. And I got the bug. I got the bug to do more than just work in a restaurant. One of my first jobs was at the Purple Cactus in Jamaica Plain. I used to work at the Spirit of Boston. And I'm like, all right, that's cool. I was just working in those spaces. But like I said, I didn't feel that passion to actually be in ownership until a few years ago. And it was even more special then because at that point in time, I think there was only maybe 4 sit-down restaurants in the city, no, 3 sit-down restaurants in the city of Boston owned by African Americans. And I thought it was appalling then. I think our numbers are still appalling in terms of what they are, but my space was here. Like, if it's not me, then it might go to somebody else. So truthfully, in that moment, when I had the opportunity to be in the space and ownership, it was because I know our community needed it. We couldn't lose another space dedicated for us.
I absolutely love that. And kind of speaking of that, I know both of you had touched on, whether it was your aunts and grandmas. For me, my Nana had the bacon gene. That kind of inspired you and taught you how to cook. But thinking about just how little space Black restaurateurs and chefs have in the city, and the very unique positions that you both are in now, being establishment owners, what are some of the people or resources that really helps you see yourself in that ownership position with the raising cost of rents in Boston, the struggles of, Nia, I know Daryl's is a full service establishment, so even just the smaller percentage of Black restaurants that have that capability to be full first service. So what were some of the people and resources that really helped you in the space of Boston make a way?
Well, I'll go ahead and say it was the ability to actually see someone do it first, right? It was, again, a few years ago that I walked to Daryl's, and I was actually working at my nonprofit job to do some event coverage. And even that, we can talk about how Black-owned establishments and businesses weren't getting the right media coverage. And then at that point in time, I was working for a nonprofit media agency that was dedicated to making sure that things that were not necessarily popular in the community were actually getting covered because it was important to the community. So I met Daryl and I said, wait, this is a Black man that owns this space in what was now called the South End, having understood that it used to be Roxbury. And I wanted to understand how he was able to do it. I said, well, how did you get this space? How are you able to maintain? At that point in time, he was 22 years in the business. And I know that was a feat for us. So I talk about actually being able to see somebody in the space being very important for me to see that I can actualize my dreams. What I'll say about that mentor relationship was that he kind of laid it out. He let it be known that we would have to do certain things. We would obviously have to operate in excellence, but it was a matter of finance. It was a matter of, keeping up with tradition. Our business used to be known as Bob the Chefs. We couldn't ostracize older folks who were in our neighborhood and who realized and remembered that other business. We had to figure out how to bridge that gap. And those are all things that I think that we do innately, truthfully, in our culture. We know how to bridge gaps. And that is one of the things that I didn't have to go out there, do something new, do something trendy. I just had to kind of maintain the tradition and the heritage that we had, the legacy. So that was kind of key for me, and being able to understand how to get it done was one, having a mentor who was actually able to do it and kind of walk me through it as well. I'll let you go, Kwesi. I got a couple of notes too. A couple more notes.
I love everything you were saying right there. The idea of having a mentor and even having a space that represents so much of the city, because I remember that I went to school at RCC, and Daryl's Corner was always like, it's always been
Yeah.
those staples. For me as a chef, it's coming from a place where you're in an industry that's so much Eurocentric, where everything about food is Eurocentric. For it to be respected is Eurocentric. For it to be classified as worthy, if you would, is Eurocentric. And to come to a place where, or to work yourself into a space where you're able to find a way to highlight some of the stuff that, your question. Let me backtrack a little bit here. Your question about what it's like to be able to create spaces for folks like us. In our industry, we've always found ourselves kind of locked out when it came to Black and brown folks, we're always locked out in a way that it almost seems like if you're not doing something Eurocentric, it's not working, or it's not going to work, if that makes sense. And to be in a space where we were able to kind of capture a niche and show folks that no, the food doesn't have to be this particular thing to be sold. That was it was a groundbreaking moment for me because, I was born and raised in Ghana, and I didn't actually interact with my own African food till probably 8 to 10 years in my career, because when you're coming up in the food industry, you're almost taught to be like, oh no, if you're gonna make it, this is what you have to learn, right? And I started, the chop bar was something that I started to kind of explore my own culinary and cultural heritage at the same time. And to be able to do that and to be able to kind of transcend that into Comfort Kitchen is clutch, because representation is everything, right? To me, the difference between something becoming a fad and something becoming a long-standing kind of cultural innovation comes down to representation. And I love that, Nia, you were saying that about Daryl's Corner, because it's like that is the key. That's the essence of representation, and that's what the conversation has to be moving forward.
Absolutely. COVID has been reeling for everyone, and we know, especially for our service industry and our restaurants. I don't necessarily want us to focus on the challenges, because I think we've kind of done that so much, but thinking about the challenges that you face, what were some of the opportunities that came out of overcoming some of those challenges? So kind of flipping it and thinking of it in a positive light. What were some of the lessons that COVID has taught you and that has now created a new space or a new opportunity for you?
Yeah. I'd say, innovation is one of the things that really came out of it, and it forced us to get creative. I don't know about you, but after a while, once you are in a rhythm and you've got systems and you know how to operate, that's it. That becomes what you focus on. And every now and again, you sit there and try to refine and upgrade that operation, but you don't really think outside of the box of what else can be done. The biggest thing that COVID allowed us to do is say, listen, you've got this space. You are renting out space, and how are you trying to, eke out every dime from the space that you're renting? It makes no difference that you chose to have hours of, and in my instance, we chose to operate prior to COVID Tuesday through Sunday, only in the evenings, except for Sunday when we had brunch. But that doesn't mean that we're not paying rent for the entire 30 to 31 days that, we have to pay that rent. And we had kind of settled on, well, this is what gets us by. This is what makes us the money that we want to make or need to make, and that's it. COVID allowed us to see other areas to make money, other areas to empower, other areas to collaborate, if nothing else. And that's one of the things that I truly take from it, was like, you know what, Nia, we're in this because we are creatives. All three of us in this conversation are creatives, and we kind of maybe hone our skills and talents into one thing and then kind of get stuck there. And we don't have to be stuck there. And that's one of the things that, like, well, listen, with a little bit of technology, with a little bit of, again, collaboration, I bet you we can break out of these spaces. For us this year, we also started to look at, what does work-life balance? We talked about that so much, I think, when we were in our 9 to 5s, right? And we thought that work-life balance, man, I'm not gonna stay here till 6 o'clock 5 days a week. That could be one thing. But even in our industry, where we understand, like, we made exceptions for the fact that you might come into a 2 o'clock shift and not get out until 2 a.m. We said, oh, that's the industry. We made exceptions that said we always work holidays. But why did we always work holidays? Is that because that was the industry standard? And does that standard actually work for our individual businesses? The value and I think the advantage that we have as independent operators allows us to set our own standards. And so I kind of took back that model of this is what everyone else is doing. And I said, no, what does my team need to do? What's going to be best for us? And so, I mean, you talk about innovation, it just became a matter of when do we start taking breaks as a collective? When do we give people time off as a collective, as a group, so that we all feel rested at the same time and come back rejuvenated at the same time, better to serve our customers. One of the things is that in Massachusetts, in Boston, it gets slow during the months of July and August. Those are the two slowest months for restaurants. Yet we sat there and powered through it every year, right? We said we're going to open and operate, even if it's at a loss, because we figure we'll lose for 2 months, but win on the other 12. I mean, on the other 10. Why would we do that when we now know a little bit better on how to budget a little bit better and manage and plan a little bit better? So for us new to Daryl's is that our last day of operation for the summer was August 7th. You'll see us after Labor Day. That is something that we had to make that conscious decision to retool, but it didn't mean that we kind of had to stop serving and being present in our community. So on the flip side of that, we did something remote on the island of Martha's Vineyard, something new to us, took our team down here and, decided to create an experience that you could get in Boston. Right. So for everyone who's visiting the island, either you're from the area or you're not, now I got hundreds of people now who can't wait to get to Boston their next visit and have now put that on their map. And I mean, hundreds of people who look like us, and they often talk about how there are Black people in Boston. Yes, a very lively Black, rich community. Okay, doing a lot. So I think that it's those things and we just had to kind of get fearless. I think a lot of the times that the way we were so standard in our operations is because we were living in fear, and COVID allowed us to really start to embrace fearlessness.
Man, I don't even know how to follow that one.
Yes.
I think she took everything I had to say. No, but
it's
Nia is absolutely right in her stance. It's one of the backbones of Comfort Kitchen as a business was essentially right along those lines, where we're talking about kind of creating a situation where it's a sense of transparency and a sense of like creating a work environment that works for everybody, as opposed to just, no, you're supposed to come to work and and the food industry has been notorious for being that way, where, I mean, I grew up in the restaurant, but like I've been doing this since I was 19 years old, and it's never been, when you were sick, I think last year was probably the only time when I was sick and I was just like, yeah, I'm not going to work today. Because when you didn't go to work, it was, it was a problem. And I think the culture shift that's happening right now has never been kind of made available to folks that work in the restaurant industry. And even more than that, even when it became made available, it was just like, oh, well, you're trying to move. It wasn't accepted.
Against the tide.
You know what I mean? It was going against the tide. And I think for us at Comfort Kitchen, one of our things is just like trying to make that cultural shift and make it acceptable to implement that self-care, to make it acceptable, to create a situation where folks can get healthcare and housing and all this stuff that other industries make very much available to everybody that's involved in that industry. But for some reason, the food industry, specifically on the Black and brown end of the food industry, it's not a thing. And especially when, a lot of Black and brown folks are the backbone of this said industry. So it's amazing to hear you talk about all that, because I feel like that culture shift, and you talk about what we talked about earlier about what the environment is right now. I think that's what the environment is, and I think with proper representation, we can push that to make that happen no matter what.
Yep.
And it's bravo, because I think you all hit it on the head. COVID has taught us how not to live. Like how we were living before is not sustainable. And especially, right, restaurant and food industry is one thing, but when you're a Black and brown person in the restaurant industry, it's even twice over. And there is generational exhaustion, right? We've been working nonstop, many of us through the pandemic, while trying to take care of family and sick ones, that we have to then break the cycle. If not for everyone else, at least for our houses, at least at Daryl's, it's going to be held down. The self-care, at least that Commonwealth Comfort Kitchen, that's going to be the case. And I think that that's key to turning the tide, is like it stops with me, it stops with the people around me, and enough people hopefully catch on that becomes standard. So kind of speaking about, how you've been supporting your staff and taking breaks, I feel like oftentimes when we talk about, supporting Black businesses and supporting Black service industries, restaurants, that age old nagging conversation comes up. Well, I don't want to support if the service is not good, but what does support look like for you? Talking to your community now, what are some things that people can do to support your establishments reach their goals?
I mean, I would say right now that, and what you're saying in this moment, and I got to say that although we don't necessarily want to talk about what COVID taught us like it's really in the past, it's not in the past. It's still currently present. It's something that we are going to, in fact, be recovering from for the next 12 to 18 months, if not longer. And what I'm asking for, and what I've asked for the last 15 months, is compassion. I ask for people to really step outside of themselves and try to understand that the predicament that we are in. There are businesses who were able to just move remotely and continue their jobs. People who were able to continue their jobs from home with no problems and kind of almost go on like everything was all right as long as they were isolating. There are businesses like us who, as much as we wanted to sit at home and maybe act like we can make you some shrimp and grits, you come pick it up from my house. You can't do that. We had to go into the place and we had to negotiate with our families to say, hey, listen, I know you don't want me to go in, but I got to go in because this is how I'm going to have to earn this living. I can't let my team down, et cetera, et cetera. And there are the few that do that. There are the 15 to 20% that were able to do that. And so what I ask for is compassion still, because we're a full service restaurant. It takes about 3 times more people for every Koisi's one to operate, for the most part, or for a quick service restaurant to operate. And so, there's a sign that's out there that says, hey, how about you be kind to the people that are serving you today? Because they're the ones who decided to show up. That is so evident, right? There were times last year where I spent about 4 months in the kitchen cooking, prep, and on the line, because I was the one that showed up with the other few around me. And we never want to, sacrifice our service model, nor sacrifice our service standards. But we're at an interesting point in the road where I can easily say, hey, cool, to give you the best service, we're just going to do takeout only. I know we cannot mess up takeout only because we got enough my bodies to do that. But if my community is calling for their gathering space, if my gig artists are calling for their place to let out their craft and perform, if my staff, who in fact had to adjust to not seeing people other than us, they're like, we don't want to show up to work either because we're used to the interaction. We're social people. We in fact get our energy from the community that we serve. So we show up, we do the best that we can, but I ask for people to have compassion and understanding and realize that it takes more than just that one person who's serving you that day, right? And just even in that moment, that if I'm taking your order, but I'm short a busser and a food runner, and you don't realize that I got my cook who's also washing dishes back there, who's trying to keep up with the entire line, one would say, well, that's your business problem and you chose to be in this business, so that's on you to fix it. Okay. All I'll say is then, how about you come to work with me too, right? Help me fix that problem by coming to work with us. And outside of that, I think some of the things that have really been supportive for us outside of sales have been engagements like this, where I'm able to meet another owner, have this conversation, have people actually care about what's going on behind the scenes to understand more about how our businesses are operating and actually doing. I've appreciated notes that just said, hey, listen, I'm not coming in. I probably won't see you for a while, but I miss you. I love you. Let me show you a picture of my last visit, right? You want to talk about warming my heart? I had a young lady about 9 years old who stood in front of our restaurant with a sign up and her dad that said, "We miss you, Daryl's," right? That thing touched me so much. I think that gave me joy for a month, right? So it's things like that. You know, we're people. Like at the end of the day, we're people just like everybody else. And so as much as we keep a strong face, as much as we continue to show up and act like soldiers, we have hearts, we are compassionate, and we do this really out of the basis because we love it and we love the community that we serve. Whether you love us all the same way at the same time, we love you, I think, unconditionally. And so that's what I asked for. I asked for that same kind of reciprocity. Love us unconditionally. Understand that we're always going to have ups and downs. But if you want us to be here for you, when the moments that you want us to be here for you, please just try to be here for us.
I love that. You're dropping the gems today.
Literally dropping gems. It's, you know, for us, we're in a very unique situation where, because we're not open as a brick and mortar yet, and we're doing a residency in JP right now, and we were supposed to open last year, and we got stalled out because of the pandemic and stuff like that. But in an attempt to really, stay in tune with everything that we were planning to do. So at Comfort Kitchen, we're operating with a 3 C's model, which kind of goes from cross-cultural engagement, collaboration, and community. Those are the models we're operating on regardless. So even though we weren't able to open last year, we were like, well, we kind of sat back and thought, okay, if we're not going to open our brick and mortar on time, what can we do to really engage with the community that we're trying to serve, and the community that could, because for us, the restaurant is almost a secondary thing. Like the food is, and that's not to say that the food is not a focal point, but it's more of a secondary thing. We're trying to really be a part of the community first and foremost. And because of that, we were, and with the pandemic, we were just like, all right, well, if we can't open, well, let's just go out in the community and do what we were going to do anyway. Right. And that's what we've been doing. And we've just been connecting with community folks. And like Nia said, it's a lot of understanding, because our team, we have a team of about 5. And we're literally operating bare bones as can be. And, to be able to explain that to folks and to be able to kind of reach that branch of education to folk, like, look, for this meal to get to you, we had to do a lot, and for us to do that a lot, there was a lot of things that had to happen before that. So let's talk about a little bit of mutual understanding here, and let's really try to be kind to one another. We operate on a premise where, and we let people know this too, because I think personally, being in the industry as long as I've been, is just, I feel like sometimes folks don't necessarily understand what's happening. They come in and they just expect it, and that's it. And I think that kind of re-education of folks of what really has to happen for you to get your meal. That's where our focus is, and our kind of attention goes when we're trying to talk about what really needs to change in the food industry. Especially with Black and brown owned businesses and operated businesses. I think sometimes we get the short end of the stick because the industry is such a Eurocentric industry. We always get the short end of the stick, where when folks show up to our establishments, they're expecting an experience that's just like, why are you even, what's your thought process there? If that makes sense,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and we're trying to change that whole mentality and that whole thought process. It's just, let's not do that. Let's just come to a common ground, and let's figure out the best way to make this perfect for everybody that's involved.
Yep.
Absolutely. Compassion can go so far. This pandemic has taught me the best in people and the worst in people, especially in spaces of customer service and service. And it's interesting that both of you touch upon, just compassion with everything that goes on behind the scenes to get that one plate to that one table. And I know, working at the kitchen and working with all the businesses that function out of Commonwealth Kitchen right now, the biggest topic is staffing. No one's working, and so how do we still keep putting that food on that table for our community while we struggle with staffing issues, while we struggle with all these other things? And so people, when you're out dining, be super grateful and thankful to all the hard work that goes out behind the scenes that you don't see to make that plate come to your table. So I want to thank you both for sharing so much. The gems in this conversation are amazing. I did want to go back to something that Kwesi said. Food is not the focal point. And I think that speaks so true, especially to your two establishments. Can you talk about just how much, especially as Black and Brown creatives and food entrepreneurs, how much like the food is important, but it's the setting, it's the spaces that we create. Can you talk a little bit about how important that is for your establishments?
Well, I think, with that statement, what I was trying to say was the food is important. Don't get me wrong, the food is important.
Yes.
But the food it's essentially creating a setting or a kind of backdrop for conversations to happen. And that's the important thing. At least from where we stand, it's just we're using the food as a backdrop to really have conversations, to really have a space for community, to really have a space for some cross-cultural collaboration, and to really have folks be able to sit and be in a safe space and feel comfortable enough to have any and whatever conversation they want to have. We're trying to do Thanksgiving on a daily basis, basically. And I even use the words Thanksgiving very loosely.
Right.
Yep.
So it's more. I use Thanksgiving because it's one of those things that is just, it resonates with folks where it's like that's
family and food.
They get family and food, right? But it doesn't have to be just immediate family and food. It could be neighbors and food. It could be community, anybody in the community and food. Food brings folks together to have conversations that they otherwise would never have. And I think one of the things that we have an opportunity to do here is just be able to use that power of food to really have folks feel comfortable enough to sit and have conversations that otherwise they wouldn't have. And that's like our major standpoint. It's just, we want to see that happen in a safe space, in an encouraging space, in a welcoming space, So for us to be able to do pop-ups and still have folks come out and support is great because, like I said, we were hoping to be open by now, but to have to push the project back, we're looking to still have that energy around the project until we open.
Yeah. I'm gonna piggyback off of that and talk about, hone in on the word space. We lack so much of it, in the city of Boston. We lack the ownership of, in fact, the actual properties that we're really renting, a lot of us. But at the end of the day, we can't really identify a dozen or even 2 dozen spaces that we actually feel comfortable in this vast city. And I think what's really important about us is that we're trying to hold and maintain and preserve those spaces that we feel comfortable in. And when I say we, I'm talking about the folks who look like me and you, Black and brown people, but also we've never been segregationists so that others are not welcome. So that's not what we're talking about. But what we have decided to do, I think, as owners, have made creating that space a priority and maintaining that space a priority so that we can build community, so that we can feel comfortable with the cuisine that we're offering, so that we can promote our music, and what feels good and special to us. And so that we can actually get into those spaces and have other business deals. A lot of times we talk about where most of the business deals are made, and it's not necessarily in the boardroom. It's in those places and spaces that we feel comfortable in, after hours, kind of unwinding a bit to really get to know the people that we might want to work with, that we need to work with. And we've always had just so few of those spaces. And so for me, Daryl's Corner Bar and Kitchen is, I think I've said it a couple of times recently, that we're more of a community organization before we are a food and beverage institution, because when we couldn't play in certain places, and when, people, in fact, turn their nose up at pig's feet and chitlins and things of such being offered, we knew that there were people and a good customer base for it. And we said, well, with pride and authenticity, we're going to serve it and we're going to do it well. And so I think that that's kind of, where I'm at with it, is that, I definitely know how to operate my restaurant, but I definitely know how to make sure that it's open for community building. That's what we need to do. On a yearly basis, I offer a networking session for women entrepreneurs, specifically because I understood the hurdle of being in the room with seasoned and unseasoned entrepreneurs, and never haven't been in that room before, wondering where they all were, until I got in the room and was like, oh, wow, there's hundreds of us that need this kind of networking. And so I take my opportunity to use my space to promote what I know that we need in our community, right? And so if it's a matter of we need to learn a little bit more about a political candidate, please, I'm gonna offer up my space, because that's what we need to do in that space, so that our community is able to be heard in that opportunity. So I harp on space, and that's what to me is truly the essence of our community building and our growth, and especially our wealth in this city.
I love that. And that was a beautiful transition to my final question for the both of you before I have specific questions. And that is, what are you most unapologetic about yourself, your business, and your purpose? They can be 3 different things. They can be the same, but what are you most unapologetic of?
Oh, that's a good one.
Right.
I'm gonna need a second.
I thought about this question, and it's probably a couple of things, but I really want to wrap it up in one. And I think I am most unapologetic about my team and who we have, really spearheading and nurturing and stewarding the business, right? Because like I said, it's a community organization. We operate as a food and beverage institution, but we are a community organization. And I think I am unapologetically proud that I invest more in my team than just giving you a job. I believe that we are very, very, very open when it comes to presenting opportunities for everyone. I believe that we are non-discriminatory in our practices of hiring. I believe that we exhibit more compassion when people come to our table who may have a lack of experience, might have sordid backgrounds, might, had a little bit of challenges. I think that we are in a space that only us can empower us, right? So I'm super passionate and unapologetic about saying, no, this is who it is, this is who we got, and this is what, not even that I'm working with, this is who I'm working with. Because I know that we care, like authentically, like truly, genuinely, we care about the areas that we've come from. We care about every single, customer that comes through our door, and we care about being excellent, right? We are committed to excellent, and I'm happy about that. And so, when people look at a business like mine and they say it's an example, and sometimes in our community, people want you to kind of downplay your success and downplay the strides and the hard work that you have. And I will not do it, because I know that getting through the last year was a challenge. I know that being here in a space where most restaurants don't succeed within the first 3 years, and half of those restaurants don't, if they're Black owned, they don't get past 18 months. And so as I start to approach year 3 in ownership, and not really having gone through a full linear career in hospitality, the fact that I'm still here and lived through a pandemic to be here and are still doing it, I'm super happy about it. And I will no longer kind of downplay the fact that that was a great feat and that we did that. We did that, period. So
Yes,
that's
yes.
so that's it.
I got to do that to that.
Thank you.
And Nia is absolutely right. For me, I think one of the things that I would unequivocally say would be self-worth, the promotion of self-worth. And I think you said it in many ways in your statement, Nia, but like the truth is, it's like, for us, we're not open yet. So we're operating on a team that's like paid volunteers almost. My wife does the marketing, my business partner and his wife, they're everybody, it's a friends and family business through and through, and our kitchen runs essentially on friends that I've known from the industry from way back that are just like, no, we believe in your cause and we believe in what you're trying to do. So we're here, let's do it. Right. So the promotion of self-worth is something that's such an important factor for us, because when I say the promotion of self-worth, I'm not even talking about myself. I'm talking about everybody that's involved and everybody that sees that this is something that could be worth fighting for. And when I say worth fighting for, I'm not talking about Comfort Kitchen as a brand. I'm talking about creating spaces for, like Nia said, for people like us to be able to exist and thrive peacefully and easily, so like, and in my opinion, that comes from that idea of knowing what we're worth and knowing what we're able to do and knowing what we're able to accomplish if we have the space and the opportunity to do so. And I think one of the things that 2020 taught us as a team was that, out of all the disparities that's happening out there, the change and the change makers start with essentially us. It literally starts with us. So it's like, all right, well, how can we pitch in? And because personally, to me, if you're not doing anything about it and just talking about it, then you're just talking about it, right? But it was like, how can we put a foot in there and actually do things that we feel will be able to push this particular agenda forward, of kind of making sure that that sense of self-worth is there, the space to celebrate that self-worth is there, and the space to enact on that self-worth is there. And that's where we stand right now, and I think as much of a hard year 2020 was, I think I'm almost proud of what the results of 2020 is bringing into fruition, because it's created so much resolution and so much vision that, like Nia was saying, it's like, no, we muddled through this thing and we made it.
Yeah.
So what else can we do? Now it's just like, all right, well, yeah, we did that. What's next? Let's go do
We
it.
did that.
We did it.
We
Let's go
did
do
that.
it.
Exactly. Right. That's it.
Yes, and that is so true. 2020 was arguably the worst and best year because it made us realize that we just can't continue on this path that is not sustainable, healthy, and especially as Black and Brown people, we need to be more aware and more pushing of our self-worth. And we don't need to work ourselves in the ground to be worthy. We are worthy, period. So thank you both for highlighting that. And now I just wanted to kind of have some pointed questions for each of you. And I wanted to start with Nia, being the co-founder of Boston Black Hospitality Coalition. Can you speak on the importance of Black-owned / minority-owned, Black and Brown, women-owned institutions creating a union to support themselves and their communities?
The Boston Black Hospitality Coalition was formed out of the necessity and truly the passion to not see our businesses die through a pandemic, right? And we just focused on the health pandemic that was going on during that time, and we kind of ignored the long-standing racial pandemic that had been going on and equity pandemic that had been going on and proceeding before that. Oh, huh?
I said just on top pandemic, on top of pandemic.
Okay, right. So it's one of those things where the time happened to be now to say, listen, we can't wait any longer to do this, because we then found out there were so many more businesses that needed some of the experience and even just encouragement of others who had, again, been in it longer or even lesser time, but that might have had more innovative strategies or again, more seasoned resources. We felt that any of our businesses, that if we're going to survive, especially the ones that are neighborhood based, that we cannot do it alone. And, I think we talk about this often, and, I'm in a fraternal organization where I know that many make the good happen. And so that's the same thing here. There's no reason for me to be in this space by myself. That'd be a very lonely place. It'd be very boring. I'd be tired of going to Daryl's every day. So there is no good if I'm the only one that survives in the end. And that's why we had to do this together. And we have to continue to do it together. And we, in fact, know from our history that the more that we collaborated, and it doesn't even matter that there might be challenges to move forward. But I know that when we have that one voice, that understands and underscores the needs of our businesses across the board, we get more done, period. And so that's kind of, where the Boston Black Hospitality Coalition came from. We knew that the most immediate goal was to make sure that, some of the oldest Black-owned restaurants and bars in the city of Boston did not die. And then we knew that should anything happen like this again, and or for anything else, for any emergency that would come up, for any need for expansion, for any guidance and technical assistance, that you would probably, again, you needed to see somebody like us do it, or you needed to see someone that made you feel comfortable to say, hey, cool, let me give you that call. We then needed to be that presence. And that is going to not only strengthen the businesses that we already have created, but it's in fact going to help double and triple the businesses that we can create, because there are people who are coming to the industry who are like, I'm doing something from home. I've got my home catering business, but I want a store. How do I go about it? Please give us a call. We can help you walk through the steps of, getting a smaller space that's on, a shorter lease, to a larger space, from quick service to full service. We are your resource. And this is information that everyone talks about. Well, the information is out there. We're not those kind of people. We're not going to tell you to go search X, Y, and Z. We're in fact going to hold your hand a bit and bring you right to the source, because there is no reason for us to slow down the grind that any one of us have. We're not here to be a blockade. We're here to be a help. And I felt that it was something that I needed. I might have had that one mentor, but I was kind of lucky. I was lucky to get a person who didn't mind opening his books literally so I could see what happened, how we got here, and how I could make it better. I have no desire, like I said before, to sit in this space by myself. So the Black Hospitality Coalition is designed for that. We don't want to be here by ourselves. We, in fact, want to make sure that our businesses are strong, that if you want to grow, we want to help you grow. If you've got answers, if you got questions, and we want to be able to have those answers for you. And that's really the basis of our organization.
Thank you, Nia. And that's beautiful. I think, the theme of this conversation is community. None of us can get to where we are and where we want to go by ourselves. We have to enlist the help of our community around us. So that is beautiful. I'm glad that is now a thing, to support all of our businesses. And especially, I'll be talking to all of the businesses at the Commonwealth Kitchen to make sure that they're plugged in with you. And then, Kwesi, I think this is, as we are sitting in this current pandemic, I think your story with Comfort Kitchen is amazing because you were supposed to happen, COVID started, and now you're still flourishing and on track to open up your brick and mortar next year. So how has the pop-up model been beneficial to you and the community amidst all the craziness that COVID has brought?
I think for us right now, well, I'm going to say right now, and then we're going to backtrack a little bit. For right now, we have the opportunity to be in a residency at a restaurant in JP, Little Dipper, where we're going to be at till we open our doors fully. But as far as the pop-up model, my personal career, and as one of the owners of Comfort Kitchen, and there's like 4 of us, but my personal career was built on the pop-up model. And in fact, one of the revenue streams or one of the business strategies that we have for Comfort Kitchen is to provide an incubator space for folks that are kind of looking to get a leg up in the industry, but that otherwise would not get that kind of opportunity to be able to test their concept out. So the pandemic has really helped us, and the pop-up model has really helped us to be able to refine those strategies and refine those systems that we were working on before we opened. And now that, the opening has been extended, we've really gotten an opportunity to kind of buckle down and be able to focus on making sure those systems work, and not only work, but work very well. So that when we do open, and we do open our doors to folks, and they're able to come participate in our programs that allow them to showcase their concepts in our restaurant, we have kind of guidance. Like Nia was saying, it's like we're not looking to be in this space by ourselves. And the truth is, representation means everything. And the more of us there is in the space, the better it is for everybody involved. Right. And to be able to have systems that welcomes and creates that sense of inclusivity makes it so much better for all of us. Right. And we've been able to really fine tune those systems to be as perfect as they can be when we open, if that makes sense.
No, that absolutely does make sense. My plant hobby became a full-fledged brick and mortar location through the pop-up experience. So for those that are thinking about whether or not their idea is viable, do pop-ups. There's great resources like Black Owned Boss that holds different pop-up experiences, whether you're a food business or a creative, to just test your market first. And then you'll understand kind of what you need to do and it lays the blueprint for everything else. So I think Comfort Kitchen is a great model of what can be done amidst a global pandemic. You can still kind of bring your ideas to life, and there's still a lot of entrepreneurship dreams that can be caught in these trying times. So I want to thank you both so much. All these wonderful gems that have been dropped between the two of you. I wanted to offer up the time to plug your establishments, all of the other projects that you're on. So let us know, let everyone know where they can find you, follow you, and find the latest updates.
Well, make sure you check out Daryl's Corner Bar and Kitchen. You know, we're located at 604 Columbus Avenue, and what I like to call Roxbury's South End. You know, you can see we'll be opening again after September. DCBKBoston.com, and then on Facebook and Instagram, it's DCBK Boston. Personally, I have a hospitality company. My hospitality company is named Bar and Kitchen Hospitality, and we are also opening a cafe very soon too, called The Underground, also located on Columbus Avenue. So another brick and mortar location that is through collaboration and partnership with Northeastern University. And then, you know, we got a couple of extra things happening with the Boston Black Hospitality Coalition. We are extending membership to all, you know, businesses, food and beverage businesses, be you a brick and mortar or not. And we are going to be activating the space in Nubian Square with partners like Black Market, TACT, etc. So continue to check out those opportunities. That's blackhospitalityco.com.
Yes.
Well, thank you, Nia.
You got a lot happening. I love it. That's awesome. That's so awesome. Well, Comfort Kitchen, we're currently doing a residency in Little Dipper and JP, 669 Center Street in Jamaica Plain. We're going to be there pretty much until we open our doors in Upham's Corner, which is going to be 611 Columbia Road. Right in Upham's Corner. We're going to be right smack in the middle of Upham's Corner. And once we open, everything is up for grabs. You know, we're also working on collaboratives and kind of partnerships with folks in the city, like people like Boston Cyclist Union, UFI, Urban Farming Institute, and we're trying to create partnerships that really help and create a community and sustainable setting to create an ecology for a thriving food industry where we're at, you know. That's what we have right now. You can follow us at Comfort Kitchen BOS on Instagram, and we're on Facebook as well. And that's what we got.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, everyone. Again, all these wonderful gems drop. I hope the audience has learned a lot of great tips and tricks and just stories and backgrounds. So thank you so much. This is Quante Turner, Commonwealth Kitchen, Boston. If you are interested in starting a food business, we're actually gearing up to accept new applications this coming October, and we're having an information session shortly. So if you want to learn more, please go to commonwealthkitchen.org, and I will see everyone on the other side of this crazy pandemic. So thank you all for joining us. The Audacity series will be released over the next couple of months on our website and YouTube channel. Special thanks to our sponsors, Amazon and King Boston. Our next episode takes place on September 15th, so please mark your calendars. If you would like to be the first to learn more about upcoming Boston Arts and Music Festival, that's BAMS Fest events, please visit www.bamsfest.org and sign up for our monthly newsletter. We encourage you all to follow and like us on social media platforms at BAMSFest. And until next time, have a great night, everyone. Goodbye. Art.